Hello YouTube, in today's video I'm going to show you one of the cars I bought this year. However, it's not the Expedition, it's a different Ford product. 1977 Lincoln Mark V with a 6.6-liter engine. Honestly, I wasn't even planning to buy another car. I already had a project that was keeping me busy. But one day I came across this local listing and something about it just caught my eye. It was only about 20 minutes from my house, so I called the seller. Turned out it wasn't a private owner, it was a company that imports vehicles from the United States and Japan to Europe. They told me the story. The car had been bought at an auction in New York for a customer here in Poland. The buyer paid a deposit, but when the car arrived, he refused to pay the rest. So the company listed it for sale again just to cover their loss. When I went to see it, my first impression was, oh, it's a wreck. But as I looked closer, I realized something. The car was almost completely original and it wasn't missing any major parts. The corrosion that looked bad at first turned out to be mostly surface rust and it wouldn't require much welding. The frame itself is solid. The biggest issue? The engine wouldn't start. The original New York auction listing even mentioned the no start condition, so I knew I was taking a gamble. Still, something told me it was worth the risk, so I took a chance and bought it. As I mentioned earlier, at the time I bought it, I was already working on another project, so I didn't even have a proper place to park this car. Eventually, I towed it to my parents' recreational lot in the countryside, a quiet and safe place where it could wait for its turn. The odometer in this Lincoln shows just 27,000 miles, but as you probably know, it's an old mechanical 5-digit odometer which only counts up to 100,000 miles before rolling back to zero. So technically it could be 127,000 miles instead. However, there are a few things that make me believe the mileage might actually be original, just 27,000 miles. First of all, the interior is in surprisingly good shape. It doesn't look worn at all. There is even still a plastic cover on one of the rear seat belts, the kind they would have installed at the factory. Another clue is the tires. This car still has a full set of Michelins, including the spare. Based on the markings, they were probably made in 1977, the same year this Lincoln was built. From what I know, all Lincolns that year came from the factory with Michelin tires, so it makes sense. And honestly, no tire set would survive 127,000 miles, so 27,000 seems a lot more real. And what's even more interesting, this car has never been restored. It probably never even had any major service work done. All the paint around is original, every piece of glass is factory, every emblem and decal is exactly where it was placed almost 50 years ago, never removed. Even the accessory belts on the engine look old and dry, and they might actually be the ones it left the factory with, never replaced. This car came to me with its original title, issued in the state of New York. The previous owner was a woman who bought this Lincoln back in 1984. It was sold to the auction company in either 2023 or 24, which means she owned it for about 40 years. I was really curious about what happened to this car during all that time. It's not common for someone to keep a vehicle for that long. 4 decades with the same car is something special. So I decided to look a little deeper. I searched the previous owner's name and address online, just out of curiosity, and I couldn't believe what I found. This is a street view from Microsoft Maps and Google Maps. It shows the address somewhere in New York. I've blurred the exact location, of course, to protect the privacy of the owner. If you recognize this neighborhood, please do not share its name. Let's keep it private. So as you can see, this Microsoft photo comes from October 2021 and it shows my Lincoln parked in front of this mansion. It's under a car cover. Let's see what Google Maps can show us. The car in the same position, same exact spot. But the photo was taken in 2013, September. So 12 years between them. I have also some satellite view photos. This one was taken in 2023. The Lincoln is here. 2022. Without the cover. Now you can see it's definitely the car we are speaking about. (2018). (2016). And yes, it's 2005. And finally, 2004. It really makes me wonder when this car was last driven on a public road. I'm also curious why the owner kept it parked in front of her house for so many years and then suddenly decided to sell it to an auction company. That will probably remain a mystery. The most important thing I wanted to find out after buying the car was the condition of the engine. If it's intact, then the whole project makes sense. It means the car is worth rebuilding. During my first mechanical inspection, I noticed something interesting. It looked like someone had tried to repair the car many years ago, but they really messed up the wiring and the carburetor. Some wire connections had been changed, and a few carburetor screws were backed out. From the looks of it, that work was probably done in the 1990s. I even found some empty spark plug boxes date from that time. And all the electrical tape they used is now dry and cracking. Definitely looks like it's been there for more than 25 years. To get the engine running, I bought the original OEM shop manual and went through the entire ignition system wiring. I repaired the mess that the previous mechanic had left behind. I discovered that the starter solenoid switch was stuck, so I replaced it with a new one. In the trunk, I found two ignition modules. One of them was an original Motorcraft unit. A third module was already installed in the car. Since those parts are pretty cheap, I had ordered a new one before starting the work, just in case. Later, I found out why none of them worked properly. The ignition module wasn't getting any power. One of the wires had been chewed through, probably by mice or raccoons. I'm not sure if the previous mechanic missed that issue and replaced the modules for no reason, or if the wire was damaged sometime later. Either way, that little detail might have been the reason the car stopped running all those years ago. The next step in getting this engine ready to crank was lubricating the cylinders. This motor probably hadn't run in decades, so adding a bit of oil directly into the cylinders seemed like a smart move. To get access, I had to remove the spark plugs, and that's where the trouble started. The ignition wire boots were completely stuck to the ceramic parts of the plugs. Penetrating oil and all the usual tricks didn't help, so in the end I had to tear the boots off just to get them out. Unfortunately, I didn't have a new set of wires at the time, so I made a temporary fix using electrical tape. I wasn't sure if it would even transfer voltage properly from the coil to the plugs, but being out in the countryside, I didn't have much of a choice. After spraying some oil into the cylinders, I turned the engine over twice by hand with a ratchet. Then came the moment of truth. cranking the engine with the starter. I wanted to do it without the plugs installed, just to build some oil pressure before putting compression on the cylinders. At first, the starter didn't want to move at all, but after a few taps with a hammer, it finally came back to life. Before cranking the engine, I also disconnected the fuel line from the carburetor to make sure the old fuel wouldn't get pushed into the engine. After sitting for so many years, it was probably contaminated, maybe even full of rust or debris from the tank. So I connected an external tank with some fresh gasoline. Then I reinstalled the spark plugs and double-checked everything. At this point, I was ready for the first start attempt. I suspected it would take a long cranking, so I had a spare battery and a battery charger with me. I got into the cabin, turned the key, and something completely unexpected happened. The engine started on the very first try, just like it had been running 5 minutes ago. After the first start, I shut the engine off after about 30 seconds because all the bearings in the accessory equipment were screwing like crazy. I gave them a good spray with WD-40. Then I made a few adjustments to the carburetor and swapped the ignition module for the new one I had prepared earlier. The smoke you see in the video is just the old oil burning off at high temperature. It will clear out after a while. But I've got to say, the first start smelled more like a barbecue party than an engine test. Now that I know the engine runs, I'm ready to start rebuilding this car. My goal is to keep it as original as possible. Of course, it's going to take a lot of work, including a full repaint. However, I don't plan to strip it down to the frame. I don't think that's necessary. As for the schedule, well, there isn't one. Winter is here and I don't have a proper workshop to work in. So for now, my plan is to take the carburetor home and rebuild it completely. I also want to remove the main wiring harnesses and remake them from scratch using brand new wires. If I get the chance, I'll try to do a bit more mechanical work during the winter months. Then when spring comes, I'll move on to the body and undercarriage. The full paint job will be done at a professional shop in the summer of 2026. So that's all for today. If you have any questions or thoughts about this project, feel free to share them in the comments below. I will be happy to read and reply.